any other aspect of the title. And really where we sit as an industry culturally today, we can be proud about all of the content that we make. We are capable of making great content like Breaking Bad, or Dexter, or Homeland, or Game of Thrones. We can create those same experiences, I think, better. That's why I love representing this industry, as the cable television industry does and television provides. We have the same latitude to produce that at the same time as we produce FIFA and Skylanders and Infinity and all of the great mobile games that we have that are so popular today on every device that we're carrying. We have the range to do all of them. And that's remarkable, it's exciting, and it's not a headache.
That you can create that great content, but not market it to kids.
And we're very, very good. As the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has looked at this. They look at this every other year, and they look at media industries and say, how good a job are you doing at telling parents what you're doing, what's in the game, or what's in the movie, or what's in the song, or what's in the book? How good are you doing that? And then how good are you enforcing your own rules? And according to the Federal Trade Commission, 90% of parents are aware of the ESRB. 90% of those parents that know about it use the ESRB and find it effective. And it's enforced 90% of the time at retail, which blows the doors off motion pictures or DVDs or movies or any other form of entertainment. And for the first time ever in this survey, one company, one retailer achieved 100% enforcement, and that was Target. Never been done before. So when it comes to putting our actions where our mouth is, that's what this industry does.
And I'm assuming you'd like to see what Mark said come true as well, that ESRB ratings get used more in mobile games.
It's a big, big concern. For all of you in this room that are developing games on mobile devices, I come from the wireless industry. I worked for AirTouch in 1998, and that's where I left before I went to the Department of Commerce. I was there for several years, stayed close to that industry. You look at the processing power, you look at the bandwidth that's available on these devices, look at the size of the screens, they're a marvel. I mean, we're all fans, we're all consuming them. Everybody that has a phone now, you're going to be switching it out in 6 months to a year because there'll be something even better in the marketplace. As that happens, and as those devices penetrate in deeper and deeper into our society, where they're in the hands of kids, the rating system and the ratings approach from publishers and creators needs to be very, very responsible. We know what happens if it's not. Our industry has endured this in the past. Motion pictures went through it 100 years ago, and again 30 years after that. In each of these cases, it's important for the self-regulatory behavior to be incredibly robust. And on mobile right now, we have or Pat Vance, who is the president of the ESRB, is promoting IARC, which is the digital rating system usable for mobile. It's free, so there's no excuse when it comes to cost. It's filling out a form, and it gives you a rating, and not just in the United States, but in several markets around the world. This approach is the right one for everyone in this room and every company you invest in to be following. And if you don't, you neglect it at your peril.
And what are some cool facts about the game industry, especially given maybe that the public perception is all about Grand Theft Auto?
Well, I don't think that's true, Dean. That's a 1990s film.
Okay,
I think you're a little jaded. But I would say the industry has a much broader appeal, and it's evident from the numbers. It's not just $1 billion in 3 days from Grand Theft Auto. It's the record pace that Temple Run 2 became the most downloadable game in 3 days ever. It's that type of opportunity that exists in the industry. A couple of the facts that bear that out. Flurry did a study about a year ago, and it said 25 apps in the Apple App Store are responsible for 50% of the revenue. That's why you're sitting here. The most fascinating part to me is 24 of the 25 make video games. Another statistic on that same segment of the market, 2/3 of the time that people spend on tablets is playing games. 43% of the time they're spent on doing the same thing on their mobile phones. So when it comes to engagement on all of these new platforms and new devices, we're in a prime position as an industry. On the other side, we have 2 new consoles coming to market this year, and those consoles are expected to sell, the forecasters say, 385 million units, which is substantially more than the current generation, and this generation is twice as big as the one 2 generations prior. So we have a very exciting opportunity to see what those consoles will bring as opportunities for all of you and the companies you work for and you invest in. Now, there are a few other things I think are interesting. 176 million is another good number. 176 million is the total number of current customers that are signed up for PlayStation Network, Nintendo's Network, Xbox Live, Valve, EA, and Origin, and Activision's on social platforms. That's a very significant number, and those are real players. Those people pay, they're engaged, and that's remarkable. So that part of the ecosystem is very healthy. Then a couple other things. 50 billion. That's the media impressions that were driven off of last year's E3. 50 billion. There's only 7 billion people in the world. Only 2 billion of them have internet access. So when you look at the engagement and the appeal that our industry has, it's absolutely astounding. And it's fascinating. And you look at the pipeline, a couple other stats. 385 colleges and universities offer curricula in video games or video game degrees. Why do they do that? It's because you are hiring. And it's not just you, it's all these other offshoots of the video game industry that are fascinated with the skill set that these young students have coming out on engagement and interactivity and doing that in a digital world. There's a hunger for this across our economy that's very powerful. And the average wage in our industry is, in this state, is $100,000 a year. So those are some things that show the health and the breadth of the attraction of the industry.
So we're here to talk about the battle royal and bringing down barriers in the industry. It seems like the industry has done a lot of that in the last few years. But where do you see that the need for barriers to still exist? I assume something like gambling and games is probably a good barrier to have.
Yeah.
Right? And where do you think you'd like to see more barriers come down?
You see, I think that the barriers that are there are superficial and perhaps short-lived. If you look at this from a longer time horizon, we have great companies today that perform or serve the video game market in a traditional way, and they're branching every day into the more innovative aspects that have been discussed earlier today. They're doing this throughout their businesses. They're completely reforming. At the same time, we have brand new companies that are being born today. And they're starting in a different place on the spectrum. And they've got an intense, exciting, very high reach skill set and opportunity. And we're excited about that. We have as members. I mean, so we're delighted to have that strand of DNA and that excitement and innovation as part of the video game industry and part of what our advocacy is and what we do. And so we see these things coming together. If you look at other industries like television or motion pictures, they're not having conferences today where there is massive opportunity for improvement and engagement, where they have the ability to content be available on every device, on virtually every different business model, from free, as we heard Owen say, all the way to $60 for a disc, or even higher if you get one of the VIP packages, you pay $200 for these things. We serve all that. It's a remarkable thing. So the barriers that are there, we're seeing opportunity. And I can say with confidence, at the altitude I sit looking over the industry and talking to the breadth of people in this room and around the country, this is a fantastic time to be in this industry.
So when you started your job 6 years ago or so, I guess your job was mostly defending the rights of content makers. So now what is your job about?
My threat matrix that I manage, the opportunity matrix for the industry, is a lot more than two things now. Dean's right. When I came on 6.5 years ago, it was anti-piracy, which is a term we don't use anymore. And also it was content issues. And now the Supreme Court win, which is a very, very, very important pivotal moment for the industry. With that on the content side, we've been able to shift our attention and engage with the public, engage with policymakers on all the other things that matter about our industry and the myriad positive offshoots that come from it. And that box has gotten much bigger. And here's just a few of those things. If you care about getting a worker, you care about immigration. And immigration policy in Washington, we're the voice of the industry when it comes to that, is critically important. And that debate is one that you can follow on the front page of the newspapers. It's something we care about greatly. If you are acquiring a customer and working with a customer over the internet, that's the issue set that we manage when it comes to e-commerce. 8, 10 years ago, it didn't matter in this industry because we weren't doing it. Now we are, and others are observing them. Regulators, competitors, people that could see and take advantage of the lines of business that you're all engaged in. And again, on behalf of the industry, we look after those issues. Taxation. There's all sorts of notions about digital tax. That means taxing what's made in this room. That's a very significant issue. Look, we're a great part of a great country and we should pay our way. No one's saying that we should be tax-free. But when it comes to the tax game in Washington, it's all about shifting the burden that's on you onto someone else. And if we're not there looking after that, everyone in this room ends up being harmed. But there's also opportunity.
It ends up going to Canada, too.
Well, not necessarily, because the taxes there are pretty high, too. Then when you come to the tax incentives, 22 states in this country have tax incentives to attract your employees or the companies that you invest in. The reason why? They're great, high-paying jobs. The average wage in most states is above $85,000. Here in California, it's $100,000. You drop a studio under the larger model of 100 people or under the smaller model, 2 or 3 for mobile. You put those people in communities, they're very responsible citizens, they pay taxes, and they make the states go. And we work with the states to put those in place, and we've done that in 22 of them. And by the way, we drive big numbers when we do that. In Texas, we fixed their incentive with the help of the governor and the legislature, and we had 1,770 jobs move, largely from California to Texas in 14 months. So when the numbers are right, you all respond, and we're pleased to represent that in those environments. But I could go on. There's all sorts of things around privacy and data security and everything else, but just say it's a much, much more complex agenda, and it's one that fits this room.
So I think the industry probably should do a better job at measuring how big it is, too. I think that's one of your issues.
Yeah, Dean, I've been at this for several years. This room represents, for the most part, the digital side of the industry. It's projected to be over 53% of the revenue of the industry this year and growing. And we all know about the margins on that, or you all wouldn't be here as interested as you are in having this industry grow and seeking opportunity. So that 53% of the industry is very poorly accounted for. Now, on the retail side, we have known methods of counting that have been in decline for a couple of years now. And with that, the combined aspect of not counting what's growing and over-counting what's not creates an image of the industry that is completely false. It creates an image of an industry that's in decline, and we know that's not true. We know it's not true from the attendance here. We know it's not true from what happens at E3. We know it's not true from all the opportunity and the other positive aspects of growth that we see. So that story needs to be told. We need to have a way of rolling up and accounting for the size of our industry, because the financial markets care, culture cares, size matters. Revenue is one measurement of that. Having an aggregate measure makes it much cooler for all of us to be in this room and to be engaged in what we're doing. Other industries do this very well. They throw their weight around based on that. We deserve our day to have the full weight and measure of our reach in that conversation as well.
It's like it's a big event to have weekly box office numbers come out.
Yeah, the weekly thing is harder because how do you compare things like Grand Theft Auto and then the downloadable games? We haven't quite figured out a way to translate that. Both of them were very, very important. But more important, just the aggregate piece would be great. Think of the opportunity we're missing when we can't say with confidence we're a $61 billion industry worldwide. These numbers have all sorts of, everybody here in the room has a source about what the size of the industry is. We don't have an agreed upon measure of that. It's important.
So do you think the industry is in a golden age as far as you can measure it?
I said that at E3 4 years ago. I think every day is a marvel to represent this industry. The aggregate amount of innovation, of creative expression, of entertainment, of reach, it's just phenomenal. And so I see terrific opportunity ahead. These numbers, where you see engagement across every platform, it's every device with a screen. Every single one is a gaming system. It's a gaming platform. It's a place to engage. And if you give people a choice, they choose video games. It's remarkable, and it's very positive.
Is there a particular kind of game you'd love to see game makers create?
I'm a consumer of almost all of it, and I've got 3 kids. They're all adults now, but they are my focus group. And I'm fascinated by all of it. I mean, some of the things I'm not as drawn to as others, but I'm not particularly drawn to one thing. I will say that last year I liked it, Martin's Dice Awards, that it was back and forth between The Walking Dead and Journey. I thought that was very healthy for the industry, that those two games were representative of the very best in class according to their peers. I think that says a lot about who is driving this industry forward.
We have a question from the audience. Just one question.
Wow, no brave souls. We found one. If you could just identify yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Faisal. I represent Real Deal Interactive. As you talk about representing the industry or an industry of gaming and the proliferation of, shall we say, in-app purchases and downloads and things like that, do you see yourself or the industry becoming a regulated concept? There are people spending millions of dollars that is not considered gambling. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me say that the content aspect, what it is that you create, how you entertain, is not going to be regulated. We've drawn that line, we feel confident about that. However, as the industry grows and expands into other areas of the economy that are regulated, those aren't going to go away, they're not going to recede, and in this environment, they're much, much more active. And so, if you think about it this way, if you're taking money from a customer online, you're now drawn into all the e-commerce regulations, you're regulated. If you're supposed to collect and pay a tax, that's a regulation. That's another thing that you're being required to do. Privacy. Incredibly important developments that are going on in several places in the federal government and in Europe. So when you make a game and it has a platform for gathering information from your consumers, are you compliant with those international rules? If you're not, there are huge consequences. And the one area I would point to most profoundly, I'll give you two, where there's self-regulation through ratings. That should absolutely be top of mind for everybody who's making something that's an entertainment product. Because if you don't, we know what happens. The other area is children. If you are marketing to children, if you have game content that is attractive to children, if you expect children to engage with your product, the Federal Trade Commission has just imposed new rules, and Washington is very vigilant, as are attorney generals in the state, attorneys general, to look at those behaviors. And let's just say that companies are presumed guilty until proven innocent. I would make sure that you are very, very compliant with those rules going forward and not be an example or a test case for everyone else in this room. And so, yes, for the core part of the content is beyond the reach of regulators, but the economic models and all these new opportunities, we're now encroaching on places where there are regulations, if not here in the US, then out in the rest of the world.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks.